class, but nice to meet everybody. My name is Bailey. I'm one of the teachers and tutors oh my gosh, I was going to say at live class at Seven Sage. Live class is the program that we talk about in terms of like our teaching program. But I'm excited. We're talking about the LSAT. I know that you guys are already familiar with the LSAT, so we're going to mostly focus on some practice questions today. But I wanted to give you guys a good little rundown, help you with anything that you need, and just be an open resource. I'm going to share a lot of different resources with you guys. I'll share these slides as well as a couple other links to different hubs of resources that might be helpful for you. And you guys just ask questions whenever you have them. That's my little rundown here. I don't know if any of the other hosts wanted to introduce anything.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. The lovely Bailey Luber is here with us today from Seven Sage. Be sure to check in for the event. We have the QR code or log into Handshake and hit that check-in button. And we'll go ahead and let Bailey continue her event. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, cool. So, yeah, I think there's a good amount of people in this class that I would love for everybody, if they can, to send a little bit of a rundown in the chat. Now, I know that it'll be to everybody, like you don't have to tell me all of your scores that you've been getting, but even just give me a quick little check-in as to what's your LSAT studying been looking like so far? Have you been studying for months? Is this actually one of the first things that you might be doing to study? Are you already stuck in some sort of score plateau that you want help getting out of? Just talk to me. The more that you share, the better I can help you. But I want to get a good gauge for at least where everybody's at in their LSAT studying. And as you guys send that in the chat, I'll start going through a little bit of our overview. By the way, I have the whole PowerPoint here. I'm not going to go through all the slides, but I am going to share the slides with you guys. And let me actually do that before I forget. You guys can go through and check out the rest of these. And if you would like to have me go over anything else more specific in these slides, feel free to let me know. But I'm just going to focus the most on a couple of these pages here because the request from you guys was to do a little bit of overview, but mostly focus on LSAT practice. And that's what I'm here for. So the link to the slide should be in the chat. I'm hoping to see your guys' messages stream into me as to tell me where you're at in your LSAT studying. And by the way, don't be afraid. Like wherever you're at, if you're feeling like, oh no, I'm super behind, it doesn't matter. Just talk to me. I can better help you if you give me more info. Oh, perfect. You guys are sending things. Yay. Okay, so I'll get back to that in a second, but let me give a little bit of an overview, which I'll just start with my studying because hopefully this makes you guys feel better. So it took me a year and a half to get from the mid 150s. I started with a 156 to the mid 170s, ended up with a 175. Now, I share that all right away because I'm like, it doesn't have to take that long. I was really stubborn about this whole process. I was like, I don't want to spend any time, any money on my studying. I want to just try to do this all on my own and really streamline it as much as possible. And that definitely led to the opposite outcome occurring. I gave myself a month and a half to study when I first started. I was like, oh, this will be a piece of cake. I don't know why I decided that. I hadn't even seen an LSAT question before. And then I started taking the actual LSAT. I started doing a couple practice tests maybe before my first test. And I was like, shoot, this is more difficult than I was thinking in the first place. So I had to learn the hard way. I had a lot of unlearning and relearning of how to reason, how to think, how to just even conceptualize this test as a whole. Like it is kind of a different beast of a test than any other test that you've probably taken. You guys have already taken some practice tests, you're familiar with it. And that just took me a long time. And I also was like, I don't want to spend any money on this process. And I want to make sure that this process can be as like cost effective for you guys as possible. But goodness, had I just invested like a little bit in a curriculum when I first started studying instead of just randomly trying practice questions and trying to figure out what worked for me, this whole process would have been so much faster. So I'm here to be practical with you guys. I'm here to make sure that whatever advice that I'm giving is just like exactly what I would tell my past self. Because there's so many things that I would go back and, shake myself on the shoulders and be like, come on, you gotta understand this stuff. It's gonna make your whole studying so much easier and it would streamline everything. And then to give a little bit more insight, I would say like that whole year and a half, right? I wasn't really studying for the whole year and a half. I was telling people I was studying. I included it as part of my study timeline because it was between my first official test and my last official test. But I'd say like 9 of those months was just me letting those hand-me-down LSAT books collect dust on my desk. Maybe that's a little bit relatable. I was telling my friends that I was studying, but goodness, I hadn't touched a practice test in months. It was not effective. What I want you guys to do is get the tools to have effective studying and just streamline. Because I would say that to improve by that 20-point jump that I was looking for from the 150s to the 170s, Could have taken me about 6-ish months. I'd say the last 6 to 8 months of my studying when I was really knowing what I was doing. I was taking a practice test every week. I was pinpointing my weaknesses based on that, continuing to do some drills and full sections throughout the week to amp up to that next weekly practice test where I wanted to see some improvement. That's when I was able to actually start moving the needle and get up into the 170s. So just talk to me if you guys have any questions, have anything that you want advice on. That is exactly what I'm here for. All right, let me check in with the chat real quick, and I'm going to scroll to the page that we're going to start on. So this stuff is a little bit more rudimentary, very simple intro to the LSAT, just telling us what it stands for and who administers it. Talks through the set of skills, and I'm going to start on this page about just what is on the LSAT. Then we can go over a little bit more on accommodations or on costs if you guys would like to go over more on that. But really, we're just mostly going to focus on scoring, a little bit on study planning, and then we'll mostly just go into those questions. All right, let me see what I'm missing in the chat. And yes, check in on that QR code. Okay, so what are you guys saying? And if you haven't checked in with me yet, please do. You don't have to give me everything on your process, but just give me something and I can help you better. It's one of the first things I'm doing to prepare for the LSAT. Never taken it before. Looks like we have two like thumbs up on that, so I'm going to assume that's true for a couple other people too. Taking the LSAT twice, can't get past the high 130s. I'm going to take it again in November. Yes. Just looking for extra help to improve my score to 150 plus. Perfect. And yep, I think so many people don't know how to study properly. I am here to help you. By the way, quick overview before I get further into this. Actually, let me just write it down on this page and I can send you guys the marked up version of this PDF PowerPoint at the end of this too. But in terms of just general studying, like a very generic study plan that I might want to follow if I just have no format to follow. It's just going to be that overview that I just gave you guys. So it comes down to about one practice test per week. Make sure that you're doing a full practice test every week under time conditions. And then we have this thing on the Seven Sage website called blind review. It's this ability, once you've done something timed, to go back and see it untimed so that you can kind of pinpoint where you might have gone wrong, catch your mistakes before we tell you what the mistakes are. It's blind review because you're not looking at the answers yet. You're just trying to catch your mistakes before you're even told what's right and wrong, and you have unlimited time. Highly recommend blind reviewing and wrong answer journaling, and we can talk more about that as well. But wrong answer journaling is kind of what it sounds like. It's just some sort of checking in on for any question that you missed, where'd you go wrong? Like, how'd you fall victim to a trap answer? Where's the right answer? How did I overlook it? Sorry, I can't spell while I'm talking. And then what am I going to do better next time? Like, I need some sort of specific strategy to implement so that I can get towards my goal, stop making these same mistakes. So one PT per week, blind reviewing, wrong answer journaling. Highly recommend all of that. Then I like to do about 2 to 4 full sections throughout the week, like a full section of logical reasoning or LR or sorry, I just said the same thing twice, a full section of logical reasoning or reading comprehension, where you are getting a feel for what that whole test is like under test conditions, but you're just doing a section at a time to kind of add that together throughout the week so you get more practice without running through a ton more PTs. And then where the real needle moving, the real improvement comes in is this, I'm going to say 1 to 3 targeted drills each day. Targeted in the sense of they're targeting some sort of weak point in your studying. Like you are going through and you're realizing that you are not so good at those weakened questions. And you're like, there's a lot of these weakened questions on the test. Which, by the way, I'll show you guys on the Seven Sage website. There's a really helpful analytics tool if you want to use it there to pinpoint where your weak points are. And like it just kind of does all that work for you. But then you want to go through and start adding in those targeted drills. Maybe some weekend question drilling is what you're going to be focusing on if that's your hardest question type at the time. Maybe some of the drills are going to focus more on untimed practice versus timed practice, kind of like transferring over your skills from doing things untimed to timed. And some of them might be a little bit more focused on just like overall types of reasoning or overall passage styles for reading comprehension that you might be focusing on. So that's my baseline here. General study plan, PT a week, couple full sections throughout the week, and targeted drills each day. And then it's a lot of really just honestly being honest with yourself, like really slowing down, wrong answer journaling, all those questions that you're missing, getting to the bottom of exactly where you went wrong, where you want to do better next time, and continuing to improve. All right, let me see what else you guys are saying. I'm in the very beginning stages, have not taken it yet. First time gathering information. Okay, cool. So this is good to know actually, because I was under the impression that people have been studying for a little bit longer. Very normal though, wherever you guys are at, this is perfect. Started studying in July, getting decent scores in the 160s, been using Laha, want to get in the 170s. Yes, okay, you're in the final push. We can totally get you there. By the way, I will say that jump between the high 160s and even the low 170s, even though they're very similar scores, is probably one of the hardest to make. And I think part of it is just the mental block of like, ooh, it's the magical 170 barrier. How do I surpass it? But just remind yourself, it's just missing a few less questions per section. In order to get in the 170s, you want to be missing on average about 3 questions per section. If you can do less than that, amazing. You got a little bit more wiggle room. But like, that's pretty hard, right? Only missing 3 questions out of the 25 to 28 that they throw at you in a section. It's going to take a lot of investing in time, investing in strategy, asking questions. So that's what I'm here for. Okay, cool. Good rundown. Feel free to check in with me if you guys haven't sent anything yet. Feel free to jot down stuff on this general study plan, and I'll switch over to another what's the word? Another resource later on that'll give you a little bit more insight into the study plan. By the way, we have a free class weekly that's just a study plan workshop class, totally free for anybody to come to, even if you're not subscribed to Seven Sage. Highly recommend checking that out if that's what you're looking for more of, like just insight into how do you study for this test. Down to help you guys out. I run one of those throughout the week. We have a couple other instructors who run other ones, and I think it's just super helpful to break that down. Let me send you guys a link to these upcoming study plan workshops so that you can check those out. All right, so by the way, if you've been staring at this page already, you might as well just talk through these skills that the test is testing. It is, ooh, kind of a weird link. I don't know if that link is going to fully work for you. You can click on the link though, and then just also search study plan workshop in the search tool. That's all that I did, and that's why the link looks weird. Anyways, okay, so it's a skills-based test. It's part of why it's such a beast of a test to study. You are not memorizing, regurgitating information that you're going to forget the next day. You're training your brain to read and reason in a different way than you've probably been training your brain to do your entire life. Like this test is really nitpicky in terms of critical reading. They are really going to get you on one word or one letter can sometimes make or break the right answer versus the wrong answer. So slowing down to speed up, like slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That's something that I'm always writing out to myself on my scratch paper when I realize that I'm missing questions because I just overlooked a word. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That's like one of my fastest piece of advice that I can give to anybody on the test. You have not been learning this yet, write it down now, start seeing how it comes out in practice. You literally just have to slow down in order to speed up. You have to slow down in order to get these questions right, and then you'll be able to speed up as you continue to get more confident. So reading critically, it's a reading test above all else. It's also a reasoning test. It's asking you to use positive support as well as process elimination to get down to the right answer. Organizing evidence into an argument, like what makes a good argument, what makes a bad argument. How do we know that these premises, which are reasons to believe conclusions, actually give me reason to believe the conclusion itself, whatever they're trying to prove. They love to ask you to apply new rules or principles to a scenario. That one sounds pretty lawyery, right? Like that makes sense why we got to take this test to go to law school. And of course, you have to do this all effectively under time pressure, which can be really scary. Again, cannot stress enough this slow is smooth, smooth is fast idea. It throws everybody off. And honestly, it's something that is probably going to be holding you back from getting into another score band like the 160s, the 170s. If you are just skimming through these questions and you're trying to get the gist of it before you move on to these answer choices, you are going to be wasting your time when you're deliberating between answer choices. It's just a matter of kind of redistributing your time so that you're investing more time in your read up front, and then you can fly through those answer choices. And we're going to practice that when we get to our questions today. Quick rundown of what is on the LSAT. If you've heard of that logic games section, they got rid of it last year, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. Logical reasoning. There's 2 logical reasoning sections in any given test. One reading comprehension section in any given test. Those are the scored sections. You're also going to have this 4th experimental section, which could be LR, could be RC. They say it's experimental because it's the way that they test new questions for the future. It will be unscored. It will not count against your score, but you don't know which section it is. So you got to treat all 4 of those sections as if they're scored. Give them your best. Make sure that if like maybe you notice halfway through the second section that, oh no, I messed up on one of the questions for the first section. You can't let that get in your head. You got to just keep going. So that's the rundown in terms of this. For the reading comprehension section, it's four passages, handful of questions for each of those. They love to make these passages boring and dense and, just kind of make it something that you feel out of your wheelhouse on so that you start to check out and maybe psych yourself out. They're also going to give you a comparative passage where there's just two shorter passages on a similar topic. Really hard to distinguish between the two. I got a lot of different tips and tricks for all of these that I might not have time to share, but some of my best pieces of advice for RC is that you're checking in on the overall structure or the format or the function, purpose of the passage of each paragraph all added up. And then what does that mean when you look at the passage as a whole? We like to organize this on 7Sage in terms of these different passage styles, which here, let me actually switch my screen share over really quick, give you guys some more resources, and then we'll get into the questions. Um, and I think these passage styles are so helpful to understand that there's really only so many overall formats that these really complicated topic RC passages can be on. Like whatever topic it is, science, law, humanities, art, it's going to fit into one of these five categories. Are they laying out two sides of a debate? I put the name, the fancy 7Sage name of this passage style up here, and then I put in my own words what's going on with each of these. Are they taking a stance and sticking to it? This is probably what you think that most of these passages are going to do, but in fact, this is a very rare question or passage type. Most of them are doing something else. They might be shedding light on something that's so special. The author's drooling over this really important person, place, or thing. We talk about its origin and its impact. That's the most common passage type, and it feels very similar to single position. But once you start figuring out that it's a little bit different, it's like the author is just gushing over something that's so special. It's so unique. What's the origin? What's its impact? You get so much better at so many of these questions. Problem analysis. Are they just complaining about a problem? Do we try to solve it? Phenomenon hypothesis. Weird thing happens. We try to explain it. There's only five of these. If you've been struggling with RC, start by trying to conceptualize in terms of these overall passage styles. And I'm going to send this RC guide to you guys as well. By the way, I'm going to keep sending a lot of different documents. Don't get too overwhelmed, but if you're ever confused about how to navigate any of these, if you're ever wanting me to go in depth on any of these other tabs, feel free to let me know. I'm just going to have time to kind of do a brief overview on some of these things, and then you guys can check it out for yourself and come back to my other classes, do whatever you need to do to get more out of this. And the thing that I was mentioning before in terms of this resource that'll help you kind of build out more of a specific study plan, it's right here. I'm going to send this link as well. Again, might be kind of overwhelming when you first look at it. But quick little baseline is that if you want to go through and kind of use that generic study plan template that I was talking about, it's also listed right here. And this will give you some examples of what you might want to do day after day to get to your goal score. This is great for somebody who is in more of the final phases of their studying. If you're just starting out right now, number one, come to that study plan workshop class that's free, but also you might want to start out somewhere here, which is you're going through some sort of curriculum. We have that on the 7Sage website as well. You're getting all of the rundown on how to think for each of these sections, like foundations is going to give you different relationships between argument, grammar, all this stuff, logical reasoning, and then reading comprehension. It's going to talk you through all of those question types for logical reasoning and all of these passage styles for reading comprehension. Anyways, that's enough on that. Tell me if you guys want more on any of those resources. Just wanted to share all of that to you guys so it's helpful, in case it's helpful. Going back to my other screen, and let's get into some practice here. Okay, cool. So if you guys have questions about accommodations or costs of the LSAT, feel free to ask me on that. I'm going to skip past these pages though, and they're just in that PowerPoint if you guys want to refer to them yourself. I'm going to go over this scoring and study timeline page, and then we're going to go through and try some questions. So in general, you're talking like whenever people are talking about what they're getting on the LSAT, that's that reported score range. It goes from 120 to 180. And it's all based on just how many questions you're getting right versus wrong on the test. Now, I will warn that the test like score range, it changes ever so slightly from test to test because of this curve. The way they set the curve on this test is very weird. It's not like you're scored against the other people who are taking the test at the same time as you. Instead, you are scored against this conglomerate of people who have taken those sections from the experimental sections of the past as an experimental on one of their full tests from before. So you don't have to think too much about it, but I always just like to share that context because I think a lot of people will get freaked out if they're like, well, my friend's taking the test at the same time as me and they're really good at this. So what if that makes my score go even lower? And it's like, no, that's not how they set the curve. Don't worry about it like that. In general, if you want to ballpark out what score you might want to be shooting for, if you want to get in the 170s, you're usually looking to miss about -8 questions, missing 8 questions-ish. 8 to 9 questions. Sometimes it's 10 questions. Sometimes the curve is more forgiving. I'm just going to keep it at that 8 average so you can start ballparking this out. If you want to get in the 160s, you're talking about missing about 20-ish questions. Get a little bit more wiggle room there to be missing a few questions throughout the sections. And also think about it like there's 3 scored sections. So if you want to be thinking about how many questions you have room to miss for each section, for 170s, -2 or 3 per section, for 160s, -5, 6, or 7 per section, and so on. In the 150s, the curve starts getting like even a little bit more forgiving, if that makes sense, in the sense of you can miss about 35 questions to get in the 150s and so on. I can give you more of the specifics for the lower score ranges, but these are usually the ones that people are asking for. And it just kind of changes as you go. Like 140s, without me looking at the scale right now, I'm guessing that one's going to be about missing 45 or 50 questions and so on. In terms of how many times you can take the test, limited to 3 times in 1 year, 5 times in 5 years, 7 in a lifetime. They did get rid of this 3 times in 1 year thing, but you'll see it everywhere and people will talk about it. They got rid of it last year, I think, or maybe a couple years ago. So if you ever hear somebody say that, don't worry, it's not accurate anymore. You got 5 times in 5 years, 7 times in a lifetime. And I think many students study for 6 months to 1 year. In terms of just ballparking out what your overall study timeline might be, 3 months is a good amount of time to improve by 10-ish points from a diagnostic to your actual score. 6-ish months, you can get about 15 or 20 points of improvement during. If you want more than that, don't write it off. Like you could totally improve. It's just going to take more time. That's when we might be looking at closer to that year timeline. It also just depends how you're studying during that time, right? Like you could be like me, dilly-dallying for most of your studying. It's gonna make you have a longer timeline. All of the results, if you cancel your score, you don't show up for a test, it's reported to schools for about 5 years, or sorry, for up to 5 years. And like we were saying, how long you need to study, I'm just giving ballparks right now. It's very variable though. It all depends on your goal score, where you're starting, how much time you have throughout a week to devote to LSAT studying, and also just what you're doing with that time. Highly recommend following my advice, of course, but I'm a biased source. Try to ask me questions if you guys have ideas for how you're studying and you want to run it by me, feel free to ask. And then, yeah, of course, the higher your goal score, the longer, the more you might have to reach out to different resources or ask for help in order to get there, but you're going to be able to get there. And then this is just talking about in terms of like what the scaled score is for each of these schools. Like for the median for UMass Dartmouth, it's going to be a 161. Ignore this percentile thing, honestly. I think it's just more confusing than it is. You can just think about this like if you want to kind of ballpark out which school you want to go to, you can always look at their medians. And if you can get above, or wait, sorry. Oh my gosh, that was not the right thing to be doing. That's a ranking of the school. That was so silly. I'm going to show you guys this other page on 7Sage that will show you the medians for the school, which will help you kind of ballpark out your goal score. But basically what this graph is showing is just going through and figuring out like based on how many people are getting high scores on this test, where they end up going to school, like where their scaled score is, like what the percentile of those people are. So yeah, if you want to see like what more so the median is for each of these schools, you can go through and kind of check it out right here. Anyways, I think that this page on 7Sage is going to be a lot easier to use. Let me switch over to that real quick. And I keep saying this, but finally, we're going to get into the actual questions for today. I just keep thinking of more things that might be helpful for you guys. So I want to throw them all in there. All right, so this schools page on 7Sage, again, even if you just have a free account, if you're like, wait, I can't access any of these links that you're sending in the chat for 7Sage, just create a free account, super easy. You can access a lot of this material right away. This will go through and give you some insight into where you might want to be applying, or if you have a school in mind that you want to apply to, what goal score, what GPA you might want to be shooting for. Like in general, if you're trying to get into a school, maybe you really want to go to Ohio State, you're going to be focusing on trying to shoot for that 50th percentile LSAT score. If you want to try to get scholarship, shoot for the 75th. Neither of those is going to guarantee you admission or scholarship, but it's going to be really helpful to kind of ballpark it out. And same with the GPA, 50th is good for admissions, 75th is really good for scholarships. Don't let this freak you out though. I think so many law schools have very high GPA medians. If you have a little bit of a lower GPA median in the first place, that's okay. All the more reason, though, to invest time and resources into your LSAT studying. Alrighty. I think that's everything I wanted to say big picture. If you guys have more questions for just like general study advice or just the logistics of the LSAT, feel free to ask them whenever. But I want to get us started with some questions. I want to see how we do, and I want to give you guys some practical steps that you can follow to start getting these questions more right. So this is some advice, by the way, about when to take the LSAT, when you should start studying, how to study. This is going to be a really good rundown as well if you want to go back to this, and I can talk more about this later on. Some resources that exist, how to pick a service, and now let's actually try some questions. Quick rundown on how they score this test. There's no fancy weighting that they do, no multiplication for like, oh, it's a really hard question. Let's make this worth more of your score. Each question is worth an equal amount. No penalty for guessing, no penalty for getting something wrong. So please leave nothing blank. Go through and save yourself like even 10 extra seconds at the end of the section if you're realizing that you're not going to be able to finish it to bubble in just one answer choice down the line for each of the questions that you're not going to be able to get to. You get 35 minutes a section. You can only work on that one section at a time. You can't go back, even if you realize that you messed something up in section one. So sorry, it's already locked out once you've finished it. And one thing that you can do, though, is you can skip and flag questions within sections. You can flag questions in the 7-stage platform, on most other platforms, as well as on the official LSAT platform. Super duper helpful to do the little flagging feature to make sure that you're logging questions that you might want to go back to when you have a little bit of time at the end of the section. And you might want to start flagging questions that you're just like, wait, I've already been spending a couple minutes on this. I am not even close to being sure that the right answer is the right answer. Let's just sacrifice the tree to save the forest. Like, pause on this one question that I seem to be putting all of my eggs in one basket on and make sure that I'm still saving myself time to redistribute for these other questions. This is an overview of what the RC section looks like. We'll come back to that if you guys are curious. And now this is some stuff on LR. I'm going to skip past all of this and just get into an actual question because I want to make this a little bit more practical. And for each of these question types, what you want to be doing is reading the question first. You'll see mixed advice on this, by the way. I went through a lot of my studying having just not read the question first. I would always read the stimulus first. Now I'm very team read question first because it tells you how to think about the stimulus and then how to go about answering the question. So here I'm like, what kind of question are we asking ourselves? The reasoning in this argument is flawed because the argument, okay, so this is what we would call a flaw question. And I'm just asking myself, what's wrong with the reasoning here? And let me show you guys this other resource because I'm about to grab some step-by-steps from it, and I like to share this in other classes. This is just a hub for all of the different question types that you might encounter on the logical reasoning section. And then in normal people speak, normal people words, not fancy LSAT words, I give you some practical steps that you can follow to get to the right answer, double check your answer, and be confident moving on. It's just a two-pager. All of the different question types fit onto these 2 pages. The first page is organized in terms of question types that have a gap or a hole in the stimulus, like there's some sort of reason that you're not believing that conclusion given those premises. And then the other page is just organized into outliers. It's ones where maybe there's some sort of gap or hole in the stimulus. Maybe you're not totally believing that conclusion given those premises. Again, conclusion, what we're trying to prove, premises, the support. But it's not your job to break it down. It's your job to do something else, and the little steps will tell you what to do. Anyways, sent that PDF in the chat in case you guys want to follow it. Here's my little steps for a flaw question. What I'm going to do here is talk through how to approach this. We'll kind of break down the stimulus for this first one together, and then I'm going to let you guys think through these answer choices on your own. And let me see if I have access to do polls in this class. Ooh, I might not be able to. I don't know if you guys can change the settings right now, but if it's possible to add polls or quizzes, that would be super helpful because then we could just get a feel. It's usually anonymous, so like shouldn't be scary for everybody. Just vote in the poll and then I can get a feel for how the class is thinking. But if we can't get that figured out, that's okay. We can just kind of do it mentally and then we'll talk about it. Anyways, workflow right now, we're going to go through these first 2 steps together, finding the premises and the main conclusion in the argument, and then spotting that gap, figuring out what's wrong with this argument, what's the flaw, but putting that into our own words. Then I'll let you guys go down those answer choices, figure out which one is totally descriptively accurate, true about the argument, and constitutes a flaw. Like it's something that arguments can't do if they want to be valid. And then we will discuss. So, factory manager says, one reason that the automobile parts this factory produces are expensive. Okay, so we're getting some reason to believe that, hey, these parts are really expensive. Why are they so expensive? It's because our manufacturing equipment is outdated and inefficient. Got it. We got old equipment. Makes sense. Our products would be more competitively priced if we were to refurbish the factory completely with new efficient equipment. And I'm already kind of playing devil's advocate here, and I'm like, well, that's kind of extreme, right? Like, do we have to refurbish the factory? Well, we're saying if we refurbish the factory, then our products would be more competitively priced. But nothing in here so far is saying that we have to refurbish the factory. So let's be careful with that. Let's see if they jump to something like, well, we have to refurbish in our conclusion. We know it's one reason that they're inexpensive or that they are expensive right now. And so if we were to fix it, it could be fixing one of the possible reasons why these products are so expensive. But is it the only way to do this? Let's see. So therefore, okay, therefore is a conclusion indicator. That's how I know that whatever comes next is probably going to be something that we're trying to prove. Since is going to be a premise indicator. That's going to be like my final little reason to believe what we're trying to prove. Let me skip past it really quick. Therefore, we must. Yep, they did the thing that I didn't want them to do. We must completely refurbish. Let's go back. Let's see if in that final premise they gave me reason to believe that we really must refurbish because I'm not buying it. Since to survive in today's market, oh yes, perfect. Okay, you guys can start voting in that poll if you guys want. Since to survive in today's market, we have to make our products more competitively priced. Okay, so we have to get the prices better. But does that mean that we have to refurbish? I don't know. I'm not buying it. So my prephrase here, my spotting of the gap in my own words, why am I not believing this conclusion based on those premises, is I'm thinking, well, this is one way to fix the problem that we're having, but is it the only way? Just because we could refurbish and that would help, does that mean that we must refurbish? So my prephrase here of what my flaw is just here, maybe I'll just put it down here. Just because this one way will work, is it the only way? Do we have to do it? With that, you guys can start looking at those answer choices. Keep an open mind for how they're going to phrase it. The LSAT loves to phrase things in a very confusing way. Pause every couple words when you're translating these answer choices into your own words and really think about what they mean. I think where people go wrong is they just skim too fast. They're like, oh, yeah, I got the gist of that. Let me just move on. And then you fall for an answer choice that just is not entirely accurate about the stimulus, or it's not even a flaw. So, best of luck. I'll let you guys think for a second. I'll shut myself up. And if you guys have any questions, just send them in the chat. Okay, so the poll automatically popped up for me. If you clicked it out, maybe it might be under more, three dots, and then polls and quizzes. But since I use Zoom for other classes, I know that if you're on a different, like if you're not on a computer, maybe you're on your phone, sometimes the poll just doesn't pop up. So if you can't find the poll, it's okay. Just mentally log your answer. It's all good. I don't want to rush you guys, but I'm going to give about 45 more seconds here. Tell me if you need more time. 15 more seconds at this point. Just click the answer choice you're leaning towards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice. Okay, good work here. So I got 75% participation, 58% accurate. I'm like, a win is a win. We get more than half accurate here. That is awesome. Now let's talk through how to get to the right answer. Some of us might have gotten the wrong answer, and that's totally okay. Like, you can't be beating yourself up for every missed question. I was doing that. That's part of why I was so stubborn in my studying. It's part of what held me back from the improvement that I wanted to see for the longest time, because every question that I missed was like, oh no, it wasn't just I missed a question. It was like, oh, I must not be smart enough for this test. I was telling myself that this was the end of the world. If I can't get this question right, then how am I going to get any questions right? No, no, no. It's so normal as humans to kind of be putting that pressure on yourself, but just dial it back. Remind yourself that that sort of pressure that you're adding to yourself is not helpful. It's only hurtful. Just be happy. You did something right. Jot down something that you did right here, and then also jot down some sort of takeaway. What am I going to do better next time? That's what you want to do every time. All right, for this first one, well, I'll open it up. Do I have anybody who wants to kind of volunteer, unmute, talk through with me how you went through these answer choices and how you ended up with the answer choice that you ended up with? If nobody wants to volunteer for this first one, I can do it, but I'll encourage you guys to do it for the next one. Anybody? Okay, I'll take the first one. I'm going to make somebody do it for the next one. And trust me, I know it's kind of scary. You also might just be like, wait, this is my very first time seeing these. Don't worry too much about it. If you have a little bit more practice, maybe you want to take one for the team and be the volunteer here. I always just remind my students that the more that you volunteer in these classes, the more you're going to learn. I know it's scary, but it's just like you're going to get feedback on your thought process. You're going to figure out what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right, and you're going to be able to streamline your learning. All right, so I'm going down these answer choices and I'm asking myself two questions. I'm like, first of all, is this even accurate about the argument? Let's start there. A, is it accurate that the argument fails to recognize? So when they phrase it like fails to recognize, they're implying that you should have recognized that and that would change things. So, I mean, we'll see if they fail to recognize this, but also would this thing that they should have recognized change things? That's how we want to evaluate it. So if they fail to recognize, or do they fail to recognize that the price of a particular commodity, so maybe that's talking about the price of automobile parts, can change over time. Okay, the price can change over time. Cool. My problem is that our specific parts are not matching the market prices. So yeah, maybe the overall price of the commodity can change over time. That might be referring more to that like market price, but we still don't have these competitively priced products. Plus, we're talking about right now. We're not talking about the future. So amazing. Nobody chose this one. Good job. We don't care that the price of a particular commodity can change over time. We want to point out this flaw where they're just assuming that since this one way will work, it must be the only way. We have to do it. B, does it shift without justification? Okay. So if there's some sort of jump here between premise and conclusion, then that could be something. From treating something as, ooh, there we go. I'm liking this one way of achieving a goal. What was the one way of achieving a goal? And by the way, like I'm doing this exact same thing when I'm reading through these. I pause mid-sentence and I go right back up to the stimulus and I try to map it back on. The one way of achieving the goal is to refurbish the factory, right? Like one reason that they're expensive is our manufacturing equipment is outdated. If we were to refurbish, that's saying it would be sufficient to refurbish to guarantee that we could fix the pricing problem. But we never said that it was the only way. And then all of a sudden, yep, they shift without justification from treating it as one way, that's what we were doing in the premises, to treating it as the only way. Like we must do this. Since when do we have to do this? Couldn't we do something else? Maybe we don't have to fully refurbish the factory. You can get kind of sassy with these in order to get better at them. Maybe we could just, I don't know, change our prices and like cut the losses or something. Like that could also solve some things right away. So B is perfect. I'm going to put a pin in it. Let's see if I can get rid of these other ones, and then we will move on to the next question. C, does it argue that one thing is the cause of another? So pause, try to map that back onto the stimulus. We did say like one cause could be like one reason that the parts are expensive. The cause is that they're outdated and inefficient. So I'm fine with this so far. Like the one thing that might be the cause is the whole outdated parts thing. Let's see if the rest of this stimulus maps on, or the rest of this answer choice maps on. This is the stimulus. I keep referring to the stimulus as the big paragraph up top. So one thing is the cause. Maybe that's the outdated parts. When the evidence given indicates that, wait, the second thing? So wait, the outdated parts was the thing that was supposed to cause the high prices. All of a sudden, it's trying to say that the evidence given says that the second thing, the prices, may in fact be the cause of the first, the parts being outdated. That's weird. What do we mean the high prices cause the parts to be outdated? We have no evidence given that indicates that the second thing, the prices, may be the cause of the first. So we got to get rid of this one. And it really does take that extra investment, a few seconds, in figuring out what are they referring to with that weird, vague referential phrasing. What are they saying is the second thing? What are they saying is the cause? Totally worth pausing and figuring out what they really mean, because then you can see that C just isn't even accurate. D recommends a solution to a problem. We did recommend a solution, but let's see if the rest of this is accurate. Without first addressing any possible causes or considering any possible causes, no, we considered a possible cause, right? That was for a sentence. One reason that they're expensive is the parts are outdated or the equipment is outdated. I don't know why I keep saying parts. I mean equipment by this. Anyways. All right, cool. So there's just no way. That's not true. We did consider a possible cause. And then E fails to make a definite recommendation. Pause right there. We do make a definite recommendation. In fact, our recommendation is like much stronger than it should be. It must be completely refurbished. So I'm going to stop reading that one right away. We do make a definite recommendation. We say exactly what we need to do. Any questions on this one? How are we feeling? Jot down your takeaways. Where'd you go wrong? What'd you do right? You did at least one thing right, probably. What are you going to do better next time? Okay, I see no questions. I don't want to bulldoze over anybody. So what I'm going to do is just move on to the next one. But if you guys have questions from this last question, literally do not be afraid to ask. You can direct message me in the chat too. Just drop down on the everyone and direct message it right to me if you're kind of nervous to ask your question. You're like, what if nobody else has it? I'm sure somebody else has it. All right, let's try this next one. By the way, what I did when I was choosing the question types here was I just chose the most common question types. Flaw, by far, is the most common question type. Like you're on average going to see between three, four, sometimes five of those per section. Necessary assumption is what this next one is going to be, which let's grab our workflow from that or workflow for that from the LR recipes page. These are the next most common, and then we're going to go over weaken and most strongly supported as well. Those are just like the top four most common question types. If you're ever at a loss for like, wait, how should I be spending my time? You can always get some more improvement by focusing on any of those question types because it'll give you a lot of bang for your buck. You're going to see a lot of these on the real test. All right. Here is a new poll, or actually, Okay, let me pause on the poll for a second. Instead of doing this one all together, I'm going to let you guys try this a little bit more on your own, but I'm going to stop talk you through the steps first, and then I'm going to let you guys try the entire question on your own. Like I won't read the stimulus out loud. So for necessary assumption, they're asking you to find a missing sentence, missing premise, but I like to make it even more simple. Just call this a missing sentence. Like they should have said this thing out loud. They're implying that it's true, but they haven't explicitly stated it. And then we're trying to find one of these that's not sufficient, it's not enough to guarantee the conclusion. It's absolutely necessary. It is something that the argument depends on. So, how I like to kind of visualize these, and this will make more sense once you start practicing the LSAT a little bit more and understand this conditional reasoning. But if the main conclusion really does follow from those premises, that's what I mean by this little MCP format. If the main conclusion up top in the stimulus really does follow given those premises, you're asking yourself for necessary assumption, what must be true? The necessary assumption is something that must be true. It must be assumed for the conclusion to follow from the premises. To double check your answers here, you're going to be able to say, well, what if this necessary assumption wasn't true? Well, then there's no way that the conclusion follows from the premises. That's you negating and seeing if this destroys the argument. So if you're feeling like a lot of this is just brand new to you right now and you're like, wait, I don't even know what I'm doing, let me make it a little bit more simple. These first three steps are going to be very similar to what we just did before. You're identifying those premises in the main conclusion. You're asking yourself, what are the things that are giving me reason to believe versus what are they trying to prove to me? Then you're going to ask yourself, why am I not believing this conclusion given those premises? What's not so great about this argument? Then turn that into a pre-phrase. Instead of describing what's wrong with the argument now, you're going one step further than a flaw question, and you're asking yourself, what do I have to assume if this conclusion really does follow? Then you do these two tests on these answer choices. If the conclusion really is true, does this answer choice have to be assumed? Does it have to be true? That's MBT, must be true test. Just like write that down so you guys know, must be true. And then you can ask yourself, if this were not the case, if I were to assume my answer choice to not be true, would that destroy the argument? Try your best here. A lot of this is also going to be coming from a shift between premise and conclusion. Like if they were trying to talk about one thing in the premises and then all of a sudden they jump to this really strong wording in the conclusion that you're like, I don't know if I'm believing that. Pick up on that. That's where that gap or hole is going to come in. So you spot the gap, figure out what's not so believable about this conclusion based on those premises, gravitate towards strong wording, like require, I'm seeing that right away. You might want to be thinking about that. And then go back and turn this into something that must be assumed. But if you're feeling real lost here, just focus on those two tests. Does this must be true, or is this a must be true? And when I negate this, does it destroy the argument? All right, I'm going to catch up with the chat here and let you guys start thinking about this one on your own. I'll respond to things in the chat. Just about 1 more minute here, and you can refer to the chat if you want some advice on real test timing. Okay, I'm seeing a lull in voting in the poll. Let's do 30 more seconds here. Again, if you're feeling super lost, just click the answer choice you're leaning towards so I know how to better cater that explanation. All right, I'm gonna end it. Five, four, three, two, one. Nice. Okay, so we got 67% accurate here. Win is a win. 69% participated. Pretty good, pretty good. I'll break down the stimulus here, and then again, I'm going to offer if anybody wants to be brave, try to volunteer and talk me through your thought process with these answer choices. I'll make it nice and easy. I will not bite. I will not even make you feel bad if you end up getting it wrong. It's all good. I'm just going to coax you into the right answer. I'm going to give you some practical questions that you can ask yourself so that you can get these right on your own. So, stimulus breakdown. Let's go. Global ecological problems. Okay, so like problems that have to do with ecology on the global scale. They reduce, okay, so we can bring them down to just the problem of balancing supply and demand. Yes, if you ever taken an econ class, or even if you haven't, you know about this age-old problem. People want a lot of things, but we only have so much. Supply, demand. So supply is strictly confined by the Earth's limitations. Yeah, exactly. We only have so much. I don't know how much we have. Be careful there. We said it's confined by the Earth's limitations. Does it tell us what those limitations are? No. So I don't even know if we know what the limitations are. I know that it is confined to some extent, though. Demand, however, is essentially unlimited. Okay. So demand has no limits. People can want however much they want, as there are no limits on the potential demands made by humans. Yeah, exactly. The natural tendency for there to be an imbalance. Be careful here, because even how they're phrasing this is they're saying there's some sort of imbalance between demand and supply. That could be that there's like more supply than demand, which would technically still be an imbalance, but like that wouldn't be bad, right? That would be like, oh, we have more than we need. Or it could be that there's more demand than supply. That would be bad. That would be like people want way more than what we have, and that's not going to work. So just be careful with how they're phrasing all this stuff because they're going to make a jump in this conclusion, and I'm setting us up for it. So imbalance as it stands right now is either one of these options, right? Could be supply is higher, could be demand is higher. We haven't said that yet. Therefore, any solutions require strong wording. I see that therefore, that's a conclusion indicator here. Reducing current human demand. Wait, what? How do I know that it requires reducing demand? Because I got two options as of right now. It could be that supply is greater, it could be that demand is greater. We never explicitly said that demand is greater, but look how well they wrote this question. They were trying to gaslight you and thinking immediately that they already said that demand is higher. And that's what your brain has to assume, necessary assumption, that's the question type, in order to get from premise to conclusion. You have to assume that the demand must exceed the supply right now, because then we would get to our conclusion of, well, we are requiring reducing that demand. So that's exactly how I'm going through these motions. That's how I'm turning it into a prephrase of what must be assumed. My prephrase of what must be assumed here is, well, we're assuming that demand is greater than supply. We're assuming this. And that's exactly what you're looking for in these answer choices. Now, these answer choices are so much easier to parse through. Anybody want to try? Ooh, good question. Somebody asked for how to contact me after this. I'm going to send my email in the chat, bailey.luber@sevensage.com. Any brave volunteers? Even if you feel like you got it wrong, I'm used to the awkward silence. I'll sit here. All right. I'm going to cold call on the next one if nobody volunteers, but I'll do this one again for you guys. So what do we have to assume? We already got to our pre-phrase. We're assuming that demand exceeds supply. Let's go. A, does it have to be true that supply and demand tend to balance themselves in the long run? What? That almost feels like the opposite of where we were going with this argument. Because we were talking about solutions requiring us intervening, reducing the demand. They tend to balance themselves. That's like we wouldn't need to do anything to fix the problem. So no, that's definitely not a must be true as it stands. It's going to be a little bit more of a weakener. Like if this were a weaken question, that could be a good weakener potentially, but it's not going to be something that we have to assume. B, it is possible. Do we know that it is possible to determine what the limitations are, determine the limitations of the supply? No, that's what we were talking about in the first place. We just said the supply is confined by the limitations, but we don't know what they are. We don't know that it's possible to determine what the limitations are. So we can also get rid of this because that must be true test. Just does this have to be true based on everything that they said up top? C, does it have to be true that actual human demand, oh, here's something that's calling my attention, exceeds the Earth's sustainable supply? Yes, it has to be the case that demand outweighs or exceeds supply right now, because how else would we make our conclusion? If we wanted to negate this, we'd ask ourselves, well, what if this weren't true, that actual human demand exceeds the supply? If actual human demand does not exceed supply, that could be like they're equal, or it could be that supply is greater than demand. Well, then would we have to reduce current human demand? No, that conclusion would feel so silly. So C is perfect. It's both a must be true, and when negated, it totally destroys that argument. It makes it so my conclusion no longer follows. D, it is never possible. Does it have to be the case that it's never possible to achieve a balance between supply and demand? Well, again, this is kind of similar to A, where it seems to go against the grain of what our conclusion is saying. The conclusion is implying that there are solutions out there, they just require us reducing demand. It's never possible to get that balance. I'm like, what? That almost seems like it's never possible to have those solutions. And we just said that these solutions exist and they require something specific. So just not passing the must be true test. Do I have any evidence that it's never possible to achieve a balance? No, it seems to be doing the opposite. And then E, human consumption does not increase, or no, does not decrease. Weird. The environmental supply. Wait, what? Let's just think about that, what that actually means. So like people consuming things like you eat your burger for the day. It does not decrease the environmental supply. I'm like, what? What do you mean by that? So people eating things does not actually get rid of the supply that we have. That's just already not true. It's not a must be true. In fact, I think it's more of a must be false. So a lot of these we could get rid of because it's just like, wait, what? That doesn't even make sense. All right, amazing. Catching up with what you guys are saying in the chat here. Amazing, amazing. Okay, so yeah, if you guys have to run, totally get it. I'm supposed to stick around here for the next at least 15 minutes, so I'm super down to keep going here. And totally understand if you guys have to run early. Perfect, perfect. By the way, I love seeing all the events that you guys have coming up. This is awesome. I wish we did not have this good of a pre-law situation at my school. So you guys are set up for success. That's good. That's good. All right, any questions on this one? We feeling good? Cool, cool, cool. Take it as a no. We keep moving. All right, so here's another question type. Most strongly supported. You see those key words in the question type? We're going to call that a most strongly supported question. It's again one of the most common ones that we see, whoopsies, that we see on this test. I think the average here is like 3-ish per section. And again, if you're kind of at a loss for like, where do I want to spend my time to get the most improvement the fastest, focus on these really common question types. So for these ones, it's like, what do we know given these are facts? Like in my own words, the simplest way to think about this is just all this stuff up top is facts. And then our question for ourselves is, what do we have reason to believe? What else do we have reason to believe? It doesn't have to be a must be true. It doesn't have to be something that absolutely must follow given those premises, but as close to this must be true side of the spectrum of support, if you want to kind of organize your thoughts like that, the better. MBT is must be true. CBT is could be true or could be false. It's like could go either way. We don't know. MBF is must be false. Technically, all of these answer choices, if you want to kind of organize it like this, are going to fall somewhere in this spectrum. And you can go through and kind of put them, like pit them against each other by putting them on this spectrum if you're more of a visual learner. Okay, catching up with the chat really quick, and then we'll let you guys try this. Where do you keep these meetings? Do you Zoom as well if we can't attend in person? Wait, so I'm guessing you're talking more about like my classes versus what you guys are doing for these pre-law events. Feel free to let me know if I'm answering the wrong question right now. But if you want to get more from my classes, come to sevensage.com. I work for Seven Sage. It's okay, perfect. I work for Seven Sage and we do a lot of these live classes throughout the week. The nice thing, by the way, is that you can just join in any of these classes whenever. And like if you have the subscription to the live classes, what we do is we just give a lot of different classes throughout the day, every day. You can pick and choose which classes you want to go to based on your strengths and weaknesses, and then you can attend them. I do a lot of them throughout the week. So if you ever want to just go through and see which ones specifically I'm teaching, you can organize by instructor, and I can show you guys how to navigate that on the website afterwards. But if you like just have any other questions, feel free to email me. And also I can do more like individual tutoring if you're interested in that. I can do lots of things. All right. So here is, oh wait, no, I haven't done a new poll for this yet. I was like, wait, we already voted on this? How do we do that? Okay, so new poll now. To keep it simple, what you guys want to do is treat all this stuff up top as fact and then figure out what else we have reason to believe. These steps are going to start talking you through diagramming, which is like if there's conditional reasoning, those if A, then B statements. When we say diagramming, we're talking about turning it into those little two elements separated by an arrow. If that's brand new to you, just focus on translating this stuff into your own words and figuring out what else do I have reason to believe based on these facts. All right, best of luck. I'll let you guys try this one on your own. Find a reasonable answer choice that's supported by the evidence, and then we will discuss. Sorry, I don't know if the poll just ended, but I'm gonna keep it up for the next couple minutes. All right, I'm gonna do one more minute on the poll. 30 seconds. Missing lots of votes here, but that's okay. I'm just gonna have to end it. Last second to lock it on your votes. Oh, there we go. Okay. Five, four, three, two, one. Nice. Okay, take this distribution with a grain of salt because at this point we only had 5 votes, so like don't worry about it too much. We got 40% accurate here. Means 3 of us just need to be locking in and paying attention, but you don't know who you are yet. So double check your answer choice as we're going. See if it's actually supported by the stimulus. I'll break down this one again. I would love if somebody wants to volunteer, but I have low hopes at this point, so that's okay. I'll keep talking you guys through this. All right, so most strongly supported by the information. I got to treat all this stuff up top as facts, put it in my own words, maybe do some diagramming to help me keep track of this like chain of events. And then I'm going to go down those answer choices with an open mind for how they're going to phrase it. I don't know what they're going to say, but I'm going to remind myself that only one of these is going to be the right answer. 4 of these are going to be could be truths or must be falses, and I'm not going to choose those. So early urban societies. So like right away, I'm talking about societies in early times, but it's not all societies. Be careful with your answer choice. If you chose an answer choice that was more general, like everybody in these early times, we know about urban societies, like people who were living in cities. We don't know anything about rural ones. So we got to be careful here. We don't know anything about the entire group of people, or even like most of this group of people. We know about early urban societies. So early urban societies could not have been oh my gosh, could not have been maintained without large-scale farming nearby. Okay, so fancy way of saying, if I had an early urban society, if I'm looking at one of those, well, I would need large-scale farming nearby, right? Because like we couldn't have had it without the large-scale farming. So it requires this large-scale farming. If you want a diagram here, I'll just talk you guys through it. But if this is brand new to you again, just try to follow along. Hopefully, it's a little bit more intuitive. So it's like if we have an early urban society, well, then what do we know? We must have large scale farming. We have to have a large scale farm. Okay. And then they go and give me a reason why this is the case. When I'm dealing with these, and this is just something that you're going to pick up on more as you read more of these questions, I'm not going to put any because this is the case into my diagram. And honestly, it's usually not going to help you get to the right answer. So that's just a hack here. When they give me a reason why this sufficient necessary relationship that we just introduced in the first sentence is the case, I don't need to diagram that out, and I probably don't need to worry about it too much in order to get to my right answer. So we're just going to pause on that. I'm not going to read the sentence. I'm going to keep going. Because I also see right away that they're giving me more things that can attach onto this large scale farming. Like, what do we know about large scale farming? Well, it requires irrigation. So we know early urban societies require large scale farming. Large scale farming requires irrigation, so like some sort of, I don't know, system of pipes to get water here, which remained unfeasible in areas far from rivers or lakes until more recent times. So let's think about what that means, translate into our own words. Well, if it was unfeasible until more recent times, then it was definitely unfeasible back then for it to be far from rivers or lakes. So I can just change that into, well, if we had irrigation, then we must have been near a river or a lake, near some sort of big body of water. Because, like, I see what they're doing with that. It's like we need to be able to get the water to our crops. So early urban societies require large scale farming, which requires irrigation, which means that we're going to be near a river or lake. Now, some people fell for a trap answer here, which is following this correct chain of events. It's saying something like we need to be near rivers or lakes. But the problem with it is that it's a little bit too general. We just know about early urban societies. We don't know about all of those early societies. Anybody? Brave volunteer? I believe in us. You can even send something in the chat. I just want to make this a little bit more interactive. Going once, going twice. All right, I'll cut my losses, whatever. Encourage yourself to interact in these classes though. Like, especially if you come to more of these classes, I'm never gonna, make you talk, but I want you guys to talk. You're just gonna learn so much faster. So A, maybe you were able to pick up on what I was already warning you against. A is this trap answer. It's saying most peoples who lived in early times. But hold on, we don't know about most people who lived in early times. We just know about the people in these early urban societies. So this is where I'm like, it's a reading test above all else, right? One word in the stimulus, that urban, can make or break you getting the right answer. So we don't know anything about most people who lived in early times. Do we know that most people in general who lived in early times were near rivers or lakes? I mean, like you did something well by understanding this chain of events requires you to be near a river or lake. But where you went wrong if you chose this answer choice is you assumed that what was true about urban societies was true about just in general people who lived in early times. So that's why we got to get rid of it. We don't know about that. It's technically it could be true, but it's not a must be true, or it's not close to a must be true. B, only if farming is possible in the absence of irrigation. Well, pause right here. We already said that large-scale farming requires irrigation. It's not allowed to change any of the facts that we already said, so this is almost making me want to get rid of it because it seems like it changes a fact, but it could just be adding more context. Like, we just knew about large scale. We didn't know about other farming. Anyways, I'm already not liking this answer choice right away because it's like only if farming is possible in the absence of irrigation. Well, then we'd probably be talking about farming that's not large scale, which doesn't even apply to the situation. I don't know anything about that, whether or not these societies can be in areas far from rivers or lakes. So we get rid of it. We don't know about that. Again, another could be true. C, in early times, do we know that it was not possible to maintain, ooh, there we go, that's fixing what was wrong with the first one, urban societies. And now we're talking early urban societies. And yep, we could not have it far from rivers or lakes. We need it to be near rivers or lakes. And I see exactly how we got that. C is perfect. I would pick it and move on in real time, but let me get rid of D and E for good measure. And good question. The LSAT does allow scratch paper. You get 6 sheets front and back throughout the entire test of scratch paper. You're not going to run out. Definitely use it. Super helpful to jot down some notes like this. And by the way, I'm writing out all the words for class, but if I'm jotting down notes in my real test, I'm just going to do something like if early urban society, then large scale farming, then irrigation, then near river slash lake. So it's just a little bit faster and I can just use those notes to myself. Okay, D, do we know that urban societies? Already hating this because it's not saying early ones. Got to be careful here. We don't know about all urban societies. We only know about early ones. With farms near rivers or lakes do not have to rely upon irrigation. I'm like, no, we can't change the facts. We said that everybody requires, if you have large scale farming, it requires irrigation. If you have an early urban society, well, it requires both of those things. So, no, we don't know about this. And then E, early rural societies, pause right there. Do we know anything about the rural societies? No, I just know about urban, so we can stop right there. It's just going to be a could be true. Can't be a must be true. So all of these other ones were could be trues. They just weren't guaranteed. Oh, and by the way, sorry, I keep saying it's not going to be a must be true, but technically what we're looking for here is like a most strongly supported. What do we have reason to believe? This is a really well written answer choice in the sense of, you know what, it's closer to a must be true. And so that's good. All right, I see we're a minute away from our time, so let's wrap this up. I had a couple more questions that you guys can try, but try them on your own and feel free to look up the explanation videos for them. Seven Sage is also known for lots of explanation videos that'll help you get to the right answer. And then if you're still around, but hopefully everybody has this page and we can also email it out, we're trying to give you guys discounts to any group courses. These are a little bit different from the classes that I was talking about in the first place. Sign up for the classes if you just want that monthly subscription, be able to pop into any class whenever. But if you want more of a hands-on, comprehensive approach, you're going to have an instructor and maybe even, depending on what class you sign up for, a TA who's going to walk you through A to Z, everything that you need to know for the LSAT and get you practicing and answer all your questions. Like you're just, you got somebody in your corner. It's an ongoing class for like 10 or 12 weeks, usually if you do one of the intensive ones. Sometimes we do smaller advanced courses for about 4 weeks. Then sign up for those. We're giving you 30% off. You can just use that QR code to access it. Beyond that, any last thoughts? Any questions? How you guys feeling? So all five theoretically could be true. Okay, so be careful. No, so there's always going to be more reason to believe one of them than the others. So when I say could be true, I mean that so literally. Like it's totally unsupported. It could be true, it could be false. The right answer is always going to have positive support. So I would just be careful about phrasing it in your head in terms of like what's the most relevant truth, because there's never going to be five just straight up could be truths. Always one of them is just going to receive support. So just ask yourself, like, does this receive support? And then you got it. Good question. All right. I will let you guys go then at that point. But anything else I can help you guys out with? Any last thoughts? Is 2 months enough to study if I've already taken it twice? So you got to give me more context. Like enough to study is, I mean, yeah, you're going to be able to study during that time, but how much of a score jump are you trying to see? Like if you're like, I need 10 points in 2 months, I would say that that's possible, but it would be pushing it. If you're thinking you need more than 10 points in 2 months, that's what I would just be honest with you and be like, I don't think that's enough time to study. If you're trying to improve by between 5 and 10 points, totally, totally possible. I got all three right, so I know I have a good understanding, just need to work on timing. Right, exactly. Okay, that's good. Like a win is a win. Feel free to like give me more context on that, but yeah, you should be fine overall. And then okay, wait, you said I plan on registering. Oh, sweet. Okay, okay. Okay, that sounds good. And I'm guessing what that means is that you taken a practice test recently, or is that just your official LSAT score? Because I'm also curious about like where you're practice testing right now. Like what you want to do is get some more practice tests under your belt to figure out where your average score is right now, and then I can give you better advice. Right, so you haven't taken a practice test in a while, I'm guessing. Take a practice test this weekend, see where you're at, and then feel free to email me if you want to tell me where you're at based on that practice test. I can give you more practical advice, but yeah, and definitely like this is your sign. Get into that weekly practice test phase so you get a feel for what the whole test feels like. And then throughout the week, you're doing a lot more of those targeted drills. By the way, there's a ton of advice on that study plan workshop document that I sent you guys for targeted drills, and just come to that free class if you want more on that. Good questions. All right, amazing. Glad to be of help. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you for joining us today, Bailey. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.